exactly when? No?
Go back.
70s?
No.
60s.
Oh, 60s.
Actually,
Wow.
according to Wikipedia, 1956.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
the first model, and I love this name, and I actually knew this already, having worked for IBM, which we'll get into that. The name of the first hard disk drive, of course, it had its own acronym. It was RAMAC, R-A-M-A,
Random access memory.
close, R-A-M-A-C, R-A-M-A-C, RAMAC. And I read somewhere on social media, that's a great name for a Bond villain, RAMAC. Anyway, you were partially correct. I guess this is the third part. What does RAMAC stand for? Pete gave you part of the answer. RAMAC. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. It stands for Random Access
Memory
Method
method.
of Accounting and Control.
Wow.
Even in 1956, you needed an acronym.
Well, I got one right.
Okay, very good. Okay, another one. Then I'll be quiet. So hard disk drives, clearly an important technological invention in the history of computing. Second one is dynamic. I'm going to tell you what it stands for. DRAM, dynamic random access memory. Every computer uses DRAM. So hint, what company invented DRAM?
IBM?
Ding! Correct.
There seems to be a common thread this morning.
Yes. What year?
Oh, DRAM?
Yeah.
1980?
Wrong.
70?
Nope.
60?
Yes, 1966.
Wow.
So
Goodness.
that's enough for our technical history of today. We've got a jam-packed show. I'm going to let Cindy go ahead and introduce herself, introduce our two guests, and then we'll get started. Cindy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey. Excited to be here as a co-host today. So I'm Cindy Metzler. I have a marketing and PR firm called Owwll. I've been in the South Florida community for 25 years and have known these gentlemen for a long time. Very heavily involved in the tech community, worked with lots of companies like Tyco and Motorola as clients. And I'm also co-organizer of TEDx Boca Raton. So excited to be here today because Pete Martinez was one of our TEDx speakers in 2019 and spoke about AI back then, right? How cutting edge was that?
So I've known Pete for a long time. He's always been a little ahead of his time.
Yes. And then, of course, I have my partner in crime, Eric Mintz, here, and he is the organizer of TEDx Boca, and we've been working on it together since 2017. So yeah, it's been a labor of love for both of us most of the time, right? And I am excited to be here with three former IBMers who have this incredible heritage with Boca Raton, which it's our 100th anniversary for Boca this year. And the Boca Innovation Campus is where we host TEDx. And there's incredible heritage there with IBM and the birth of the personal computer, which a lot of people don't know. And that's amazing.
I was going to use that as one of the trivia questions. I thought that might be too obvious.
For us, I think so, but not everybody knows that.
True.
I tell people that and they're like, wow, So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. And I'll hand it over to Eric to give us a little intro.
From South Florida, 2 graduate degrees, one from FAU, one from MIT. I've spent my whole career in tech, started with IBM, founded 2 startups, one that was acquired by Constant Contact. And I'm currently at Mitsubishi Electric, and we have some software for the drone industry.
Very cool, Eric. Thank you. Another smarty pants here. So what about our guest here, Pete Martinez?
This is actually my 50th year in business.
Oh my goodness.
And what's been very fascinating is it's all been here in South Florida. It's all been Boca Raton. 32 years with IBM and 18 years with my own startups. But if you think of it, it spans over 6 different decades. In the 70s, I was working on robotics. In the 80s, part of the original IBM personal computer and the laptops and everything that followed. In the 90s, it was the original internet.
Wow.
In the 2000s, supercomputing. In the 2010s, it was the mobility, and now AI. But by the way, I was working on AI back in 1989.
Amazing.
But if you look at the number of opportunities without having to leave South Florida, this has been always a candy store in terms of innovation. And the notion that three of us were former IBMers, it just goes to the example that you continue your life after corporate environments and you create your own startups, you continue to innovate. So there's a culture of innovation here woven into the legacy of our community that is incredibly, incredibly strong, and it continues to thrive. And what you're seeing now with the amount of businesses coming in, the amount of money coming into South Florida, it's as exciting time as we've ever seen.
I think so too. I read an article recently. There's more billionaires in Palm Beach County than any area in the world. So that says a lot. And what you said, Pete, is so true with the technology and the history. I remember when I moved to Florida in the 90s, the late 90s, when the dot-com boom was happening. And I moved here from New York City, and a lot of people said, "Why are you moving to Boca Raton?" You know, they thought it was like a retirement area. You know, I was in my 20s. And I said, "Oh, there's a little thing called the personal computer that was born in Boca Raton," right? A lot of back then speech recognition, a lot of IBMers were, you know, launching their own businesses like Eric and you. Yeah.
No, and it's been a constant development of it, because once you get the bug in terms of technology innovation, you don't stop. If you think about the 6 decades, every one of these steps led to the other. If it were not for the personal computer, the internet would have never happened. What would you connect? If it were not for the internet, AI would never happen. How would you create a large language model without the data? So all of these things are an evolutionary. However, we're getting to a point now that is actually evolving a whole lot faster than we've ever had. And it's a much larger impact across all industries than we've ever seen.
That's what it's so cool, because I have 2 teenagers who are Gen Zers, and they would never have imagined, like they talk about AI now, they would never imagine that it started when, you know, back in the 70s. I think even maybe before that.
It was in the 60s, and
Yeah.
it goes back to touring with his Enigma machine and such. But it's been evolving. What we're calling now the large language models and generative AI has been an evolutionary. But prior to that, you heard terms such as neural networks and expert systems. Those were the real problem solvers. What we're doing now with the generative AI is just collecting all of the data and making it much more accessible. What's very exciting now, it's accessible to the consumer, which that didn't happen before. You had to be a big time scientist.
That's a recent, fairly recent, significant change.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, it's
So
huge.
now you got the whole world not only using it, but creating massive amounts of data. All of these systems are based off of the data that you create. So the machines learn and they perfect themselves.
So let me shift gears and be a little more specific to one of our experts of the day. Speaking of AI, Pete is a serial entrepreneur. Part of the legacy of that, I think you would attribute to your IBM heritage. But Pete is currently the CEO of SIVOTEC, is the name of the company. The actual product is Gina. Why don't you tell us a little about specifically what SIVOTEC and Gina is, and how you leverage AI in that solution.
So, a little bit about the name. SIVOTEC stands for Signatures in Vivo through Technology. So signatures in the living. Consider that your signature is your biological signature, your genomic signature, your biochemical signature, your cognitive signatures, but through technology. So we're using those technology to actually personalize the understanding of your health. Gina is the platform that we created. You're genetic analyst. The story is very, very fascinating. About 6 years ago, I get a call from the University of Miami. He said, "Pete, we have some work here that one of our geneticists and our technology folks have been doing." And they actually started creating algorithms on the thought process that this geneticist was doing. This was a pediatric geneticist, primarily working with kids with rare genetic diseases. So what they did was accelerate his thought process by using the AI, the expert system. So I take a look at it and say, that's pretty amazing, but algorithms by themselves don't solve the problem. So what I did was actually license the technology from the university, invested so that we created the bigger platform with the database structure, the privacy, the security, all of the platform, and then created the company 6 years ago. Fast forward 6 years, now we have done 160,000 cases of kids with rare genetic diseases across 40 countries, with 1,600 different geneticists using the platform itself. So one, it has a very good scientific validation already of what the platform is all about. But the second thing is now we created the platform and it was completely 100% bootstrapped. Nobody took a salary for 6 years.
Wow.
So it was all the core team that is still with it. So now you fast forward, you got a platform, the original team, 160,000 cases, all of the data that was created. So the company is actually being valued primarily because of the data that we have. No debt in the company. So yeah, a lot of the valuation of companies is happening now at the data perspective, primarily in the AI world. So we're valued right now based on the latest round at a $50 million valuation.
Wow. You might want to scoop up 23andMe. I just heard on the news
Yeah,
that
that's
they're
a good
having
point.
a little trouble right now.
I guess a personal note, I think there's a lot of fear in
Mhm.
the general public. Skynet, for those of you that get the reference. And I really like Pete's example because it's a great use, a productive use.
Oh, it's
It's a
incredible.
use that's going to help mankind of advanced AI. And Pete and I
And
were talking
children,
the other
too.
day that, and you know the numbers, just the order of magnitude of productivity improvement that your solution provides for geneticists. Talk a little about that using your solution.
Yeah, we took processes that used to take a highly skilled geneticist about 3 or 4 days to diagnose one case. Genetic data creates a lot of information. So we took processes that down from 3 to 4 days down to 10 seconds.
Wow.
10
Incredible.
seconds with much higher accuracy and a whole lot more data. And the data keeps continuing to refresh itself. So every night we synchronize with the top medical databases from around the world, Johns Hopkins and such. So it's always actualized. So we position it now as a diagnostic tool. We position it as a clinical decision support, help the geneticists, the physicians work a whole lot faster than they had before. However, what we realize that there are only 5,000 geneticists and genetic counselors in this country. However, there are 1 million non-geneticists known as pediatricians, primary care physician, and specialists. How do you bring the genomics world being so valuable to the non-geneticists? Well, AI.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we're using is now using the AI to bridge the lack of knowledge on the deep genetics and providing tools that can actually do the fair amount of genetic analysis without you being a geneticist. That is transformative. That's game changing in the approach that a primary care physician can do a very fast analysis, whether somebody has a condition or not, a genetic condition, make the determination, okay, I send them to this specialist or not, or is a genetic test warranted? On all these diseases, it's fast analysis, fast action is the key. Most of these diseases are the brutal ones. This is cystic fibrosis and hemophilia. So
I'm on the board with cystic fibrosis. So yeah, I mean, sounds like a game changer.
Well, on average, it takes 5 years to properly diagnose, somebody with these diseases. The moment you can move the clock up, one, you got early diagnosis, early treatment, and early intervention into it. So yeah, it's
And higher life expectancy from that. Yeah, that's amazing.
absolutely. And nowadays you can do a lot of this tests even in utero when the baby is still in the womb. So yeah, this is going to be very, very impactful.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you've been busy, Pete. Oh my goodness. How incredible. No, this is huge.
That's why I wanted to have Pete as a
Yes.
guest. I knew how amazing it was,
Yeah.
how life-changing it can be.
No, it
And
is.
it's
I mean,
such a great use of AI.
think
So
about the ripple effect. I mean, seriously, every single pediatrician, doctor, people out there are going to want want to have access to this.
This is very important, the point that you're on, because for the most part, a pediatrician primary care, their objective is to get you out of the office, unfortunately, as quickly as possible and refer you to somebody. Who do you refer them to? So
Mhm.
at least if you have some kind of angle that says, okay, I have base knowledge of what the conditions are. I'll give you an example of one of the applications that we're actually announcing at eMERGE this week.
Oh, breaking news. You heard it here first.
Is what we call Gene Screen. Gene Screen is the ability to actually diagnose somebody with a potential rare disease without having genomic information. For instance, it's a very simple application. Somebody, your primary care physician, somebody shows up at your office and they're blind. Okay, so you go into the app and you start writing blind, and 12 different choices of blindness shows up. Now, this person is blind. There's a boom. And it said, what else does it have? Well, the person is losing their hearing. So you start hearing impairment. That's the one. You hit the button, and within 1 second, 17 potential diseases show up that this person could have. And it said, what else does this person have? Well, it's got a little bit of a twitch in the arm, muscle fibrillation. You put muscle fibrillation, it gets you down to one disease, one gene that coincides with all three of those.
Wow.
One. And you punch the link, and it takes you to the website for Johns Hopkins University. This disease actually has a name. It's codified. It's called Leigh syndrome, Lighs, apostrophe S. And it affects primarily the Ashkenazi Jewish populations.
Wow.
And one more button, and here's the treatment for it.
Wow. That's
Imagine.
incredible. I mean, it's like, it's amazing because it sounds like it's democratizing the opportunity to diagnose and treat, because people are Googling and going to, all these different websites and, making themselves crazy, not knowing what's wrong or.
This is very important
Yeah.
because they're going into a Google or a WebMD search. This is all based off true, hard, trusted medical libraries like
Mhm.
Johns Hopkins and the NIH. So you're getting very, very valid results. The flip side also is true, is now you're getting the rest of the medical community involved. Your genome, the architecture of your body, is the 90% of diseases. That's the root cause. Okay.
Mhm.
So understanding current condition and your predisposition to future states, because everything that could happen to you in the future is predisposed through your genes. So this is a wild area for an engineer. I'm completely out of my league. However, we've been very fortunate to surround ourselves with heavy-duty scientists, technologies, and entrepreneurs to take it to
Wow.
market.
Incredible. So I would want to know for the listeners out there, and I know we're going to be calling someone soon, but the people that are listening, we have two serial entrepreneurs here. For the younger generation, like, give them some advice. You talked about bootstrapping, and I know Eric's had a lot of painful stories.
Why don't we hear a little from Eric as to what you're currently doing, and give us a little more background about your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Skynet. So last year I wrote an article in 2 parts called "Decoding the Drone Industry," and it got published, and it was very well received. It got me on a keynote panel for the largest drone industry.
Cool.
But part 3 is coming out probably in another month, and it is called "Time to Build Skynet."
Where would one find that article if one wanted to read it?
It's the Commercial UAV News. It's a sort of a
Okay.
popular blog. Yeah, but we in the drone industry, legitimately, there will be a type of Skynet. I mean, it's a sort of a dystopian view of
Right.
You know,
I use
Yeah.
Skynet sort of facetiously.
it is coming.
Right,
There's
right.
no doubt. When you think historically of industries like automotive,
So,
after World War II, we built infrastructure.
so I know you currently work for Mitsubishi Electric. Are you working in the drone related area at Mitsubishi, or is that something you do on the side?
No, I had the mobility infrastructure for Mitsubishi Electric. So it's
Which
soft-
includes drone?
it's
Yes.
software for the drone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go. I don't think myself included that knew that Mitsubishi had a division that focused on
Yeah,
that.
so it's Mitsubishi Electric.
Electric.
Yeah, and
Eric spoke at CES about this.
yeah, I spoke.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mitsubishi Electric is different than the larger Mitsubishi, or just a division of Mitsubishi?
So after World War II, the U.S. split Mitsubishi
Okay.
up into about 50 different entities.
Did not know that.
Nikon was one of them. Mitsubishi Electric is one
Okay.
of them. Mitsubishi Heavy.
Automotive.
Automotive.
That's what I think most
Right.
people
But
think of when they think of
when
Mitsubishi.
you see the three diamonds, that's split across a lot of different entities.
Right.
HVAC.
Yeah, HVAC, so
Right.
I work for Mitsubishi Electric US.
Okay. Primarily drone related?
I'm entirely dedicated to
Wow.
software.
We got to have you back. We
we
won't have enough time
It
to
is
go
the
into that.
most interesting job I've ever had.
Wow. So you're actually writing, Mitsubishi Electric doesn't manufacture drones, but you write software for the drones.
It's an end-to-end SaaS software platform for managing logistics.
Okay.
So it's
Wow.
purely software.
And you're based here in South Florida,
Yep.
and you're working for them full time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're headquartered in California.
Okay.
But the group
got a side hustle too, right?
Yeah, it's
Another
Yeah,
business.
my second startup that was ravaged by COVID. I'm still doing that on the side.
So let's give some advice to some startups out
Right.
there and there's experts listening from Owwll who, like, as a serial entrepreneur, both of you, like, I just think that a lot of people want to go out on their own and want to take that leap. Maybe you can just give a couple of little sound bites of, some advice.
Yeah, so I tend to take. I tend to recommend a little different course for people that want to go out and create something. I would have never been successful with my first startup if I had not had a real job with IBM. I think it's a mistake to come right out of college and pursue that passion because you're so likely to fail. I think go get a job for a couple of years
Right.
to understand how the world works, and then take that.
Or fund that dream while you're getting paid, maybe.
Yeah, right. Funding is, it's endemic to making a startup work. But I think without that experience, I was really fortunate to have, gotten into IBM. But without that experience, I would have failed, no doubt.
I guess I'm going to interject a little personal thoughts. I'm glad to hear you say that because part of my day job is talking to a lot of new founders, CEOs that are right out of college. They have a great idea. Some of them have PhDs, but they just don't have the basic business skills to really start and start and run a company that you learn from having a corporate job. So I agree with you. My experience at IBM, clearly IBM has issues like any company. But overall, I probably wouldn't be the professional, hopefully in a good sense, I am without my experience at IBM. And I know Pete agrees.
And the way to think about a startup, there's really two parts to it. There's building the product and there's commercializing the product.
Right.
And those are two very different skill sets.
Right.
And it's really oftentimes the commercialization.
That's the part I'm talking about.
Is
right.
really hard. Building 51% of a startup is just getting to working software. Most startups never get to working software.
Right.
But the commercializing part takes a lot of different skill sets to make that happen.
One of the things that we found is that fusion that you were mentioning, Jeffrey, in terms of the fresh mind with the gray hairs is very, very important.
Who are you calling old?
I didn't say old. I just say the color of hair.
Yeah,
And
you need to have a mix, I think, for sure. Yeah, there's
But
value there.
We see folks that have a tremendous understanding of the technology, but it started today.
Mhm.
You didn't see the evolution of the technology, how we got there. Second, a lot of the work effort, the grind that you have to go through to get to that point in time. But when you combine the two, you combine the energy, the brilliance, the determination with the experience, that is when magic happens. We're very, very fortunate right now to have a number of folks right out of school that have that entrepreneur spirit. But the thing that makes them very different, they don't think they can conquer the world by themselves. They're very open to the mentoring, to the association, to the growth patterns of it. And that takes a level of maturity that's not evident with most. The flip side is you need a set of seasoned professionals that are willing to accept the new technology, the new business models, and everything else. Once that happens, diffusion is magic. I usually refer to a time in the Renaissance in Florence, which was called the Enlightenment era, primarily because the Medici family brought in folks from multiple industries. They brought the chemist, they brought the physician, the engineer, the architect, and they did not perfect ideas. They actually created the intersection of ideas, and that's where the invention happened. Same thing is happening here. You're looking at a number of engineers working with geneticists, working with entrepreneurs, and creating a completely disruptive model. That's what is it. So we're about to go through a big time renaissance in both the usage of technology, primarily because of the application of the technology, and it will be multidisciplinary, no doubt.
It sounds like the teams too, based on what you're saying, like the teams are so core, and maybe just to speak to a little of that for people trying to build a business, because that's, without the right team. And I know Eric too has, with his team.
We lock ourselves 2 weeks ago. We were locked ourselves up in the at the Brick for all weekend, and we had all 14 just going at it. And it's the respect of the scientists by the technology and just working on a completely different model. We all came out of it just high-fiving to no end, because you could see the reality, as Eric was mentioning, of the software working. But now the application of it is very heartwarming. For somebody to say that you have worked in somehow helping 160,000 kids and their families through very difficult times, that's what it's all about.
Oh, it's incredible.
Right.
Incredible.
So let me follow on what Cindy said. So first of all, Pete, thanks for being a great guest. I knew you would be. I didn't know you, Eric, but you have been a great guest. So thank you for that. I'm sure people are going to want to follow up. They can follow up with you on LinkedIn. I have Pete's Owwll profile. I don't know. This week is going to be a very busy week for Pete with eMerge. So probably the following week, have you thought about, are you going to have office hours? You're going to go live periodically. How are you going to leverage the Owwll app for people to follow up with you?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, right now we're about to go through a growth spurt. Having the ability to connect with those that are up to the challenge is very key. I will probably open up from 4:00 on for interaction.
That'd be Eastern.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Eric. I didn't have a chance to talk to you. I don't know if you've gotten your profile yet on Owwll. If not, you should do that. And have you thought about making yourself available on Owwll as well?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. That'd be
We're
great.
big fans of Owwll.
Big
TEDx.
fans, yeah.
So Pete, why don't you go ahead and, because people might not be able to know the spelling, to follow up with more information on your website, go ahead and spell out the URL.
Yeah, the URL is GENA, GENA.AI.
It's a winner. I'll tell you right there. I love the name. No, when you think about it, like Alexa, and it's like so relevant to what it actually does. So
yeah, this is going to be a big revolution in terms of health, because now for the first time we'll start understanding how the body really works. Unfortunately, primarily because of the complexity, we have chopped up the body into very little pieces. So there is a specialist related to, very small part here and here and here.
Pete, excuse me. Don't mean to interrupt. We have
Hello.
We have Victoria on the phone. Can you hear me, Victoria?
I can hear you. Yes.
So Victoria, I'm required by
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry.
I'm required by the Federal Communications Commission and President Trump himself to ask you, are you okay for us to record your voice and broadcast it to the free world? I need a verbal.
we're
yes or no.
live on Owwll.
Oh, we're live on the Owwll podcast. Thank you, Cindy. And thank you. I knew I had Cindy here for a reason. Thank you. Are you okay with us recording your voice and broadcasting you live on the internet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yay, thank
So,
you.
Why don't you introduce who you are, and then I'll maybe give some context as to why I called you.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Victoria Moser. I am Director of Events and Community Partnerships here at South Florida Tech Hub, and My background is a little bit different, actually. I originally studied biology and chemistry with plans to go into medicine. So Pete's whole conversation was very interesting to me. And yeah, along the way, I just found myself drawn into tech and pivoted into web development, cyber, program project management, community building, and now here I am with event strategy. So yeah, I'm really focused on helping the ecosystem here in South Florida, and I'm really excited to be here.
So thank you. Breaking news. Victoria is a new Tech Hub employee.
Welcome, Victoria.
I knew of her.
Thank you.
I knew of her background. I thought you'd be a great potential listener and maybe have a question for Pete. So trying to do two things here. Wanted to introduce Victoria. She's now a regular full-time employee of Tech Hub. She'll be at eMerge as well. By the way, want you to mention when you'll be speaking, Pete, as well. But Victoria, I think you said you had a chance to, or we're going to have a chance to watch the podcast. Any questions for Pete or Eric?
I have so many questions for Pete, but how much time do we have?
You have 7 minutes and 37 seconds.
And
Okay,
go.
Exactly.
so I'll start with question one at the top then, because
Okay.
I feel like she mentioned this a little bit, but I'm still curious. As someone who transitioned from leading at IBM to founding your own cutting edge health tech company, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are working in the intersection between the legacy systems and all of the new emerging innovation right now?
Yeah, never underestimate how much you learned during those legacy systems. The tendencies of, well, this is a completely different environment. It's not. The fundamentals of business apply large business and small business. So you got to create product, you got to sell, you got to grind and everything related to it. However, it is a very different pace. You have to take a whole lot more personal ownership of decisions when you are the one going to the bank, writing the contracts yourself and doing a fair amount of work, where before you had tons of people doing working on your behalf. So there's a shift in terms of ownership, but the fundamentals are still the same. You got to have the passion, you got to have the drive, you got to have the innovation. What makes it very unique and very exciting is the speed of where a startup can either succeed or fail. Most startups fail, and fail either because, as Eric was mentioning, never got to a proper definition of a product, or probably number one reason, they never raised the money. Raising the money is something that we never learn in school. We never have the traction. We all start off with who do we know and what do we know? And we fall into a very, very disheartening type of condition. The amount of rejections that you get, you're not smart enough, this is not product, nobody's going to buy this thing, et cetera, will primarily dissolve most of your dreams. It's the ones that actually stick through it, and the ones that are willing to partner up. Okay, if I have this and you have that, can we make a better model together? So the money raise is probably the more challenging ones, but then the structure of creating product, defining model, and creating the go-to-market.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in knowing that. You also mentioned that SIVOTEC shortens discovery cycles for diseases. How do you balance speed with accuracy in such a sensitive area like genomic data?
There is no balancing against accuracy. You got to be 100% right all of the time. So we're talking about 99% accuracy, which, by the way, compared to the human accuracy, it's a whole lot better. But
yeah, 100%.
Having said that, there is no room for failure or ambiguity. So one of the things that it does open up is we're starting to see the relationships within the body of we know that there's a relationship between the brain and the heart and the gut and everything else, which we have never seen before because we had specialized on the given areas. Now we're taking very much of a systems approach, and we're starting to see patterns that we had never seen before. we will fairly soon understand autism, that autism is not a single thread, but it's a combination of 27 different elements coinciding at a point in time. Well, if you take one of those 27 out, does the thing not occur? So we're creating the big data models, which allow us to, one, simulate very, very quickly. So get all of the guesswork out, but then attack as quickly as possible to the solution.
It's
Oh, I
fascinating.
see.
One thought.
Very
I
fascinating.
I think Victoria makes a really good point. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your solution is a productivity tool for a geneticist or a clinician. But ultimately, a human being takes the recommendations and directs a treatment plan. It's not the AI actually directing a treatment plan, correct?
This is a very, very
Yeah.
important point. Nobody will know more about a kid with a disease than the mother, much more than the physician.
Right.
And the 15 minutes that we spent to them. So enabling the consumer with a whole lot more decision-making process and available to trusted data. So this is not a system that hallucinates and everything else. You're going after trusted data from, very, very structured medical and scientific journals that are actually being coalesced, synthesized to provide that level of insight. That's very key. So the triangulation of the consumer, the clinician, and the researcher becomes very, very important. That's where we're heading with the private language models that we're developing now.
I think the reason well, let me finish my thought if you don't mind, Victoria. The reason I mentioned that, I think there may be a public perception an AI model might ultimately make a medical decision and a treatment for a person. In your solution, there's definitely ultimately a human being that makes that decision. Fair statement?
Yeah, we never take the clinician out of the conversation, primarily because it requires somebody to define the problem and somebody to validate the solution. We're not any point close to being able to do that. We're getting better, so therefore we call it clinical decision support or
Recommendations.
yeah.
Right.
So there are a couple of things that are very important here. First, yes, you don't displace the clinician. That's very important. They're all very afraid when what's going to happen is AI going to take my job. No, AI will make your job a whole lot more specific and your productivity, and you're going to have better decisions. So don't run away from it. Run towards it, because that is the future of medicine. The second part is you're actually maintaining the liability with that person. And so it's not the liability of the software at that point in time. It's actually the liability of the professional that is interpreting the data.
Right. And I think that's a key point. That's why I brought it up. There's maybe a fear or perception that the AI model is going to make the decision. So Victoria, you've been such an interesting call out. I've given you 5 minutes and 36 more seconds.
Oh,
For your next
perfect. Because
question.
I have one last question.
Go ahead.
Actually, I feel like what you guys were just talking about a little bit answered this question, but I'm sure Pete might have more things to say about it, so I'll ask it anyway. So, AI is buzzing right now and is growing more in its buzz, even though you guys mentioned earlier that, it's been since the 60s, but right now is when people are actually talking about it more than ever. What do you believe are the most misunderstood aspects about it when it comes to health diagnostics? I feel like what you just said a little bit answered that question, but I'm not sure if you have any more points to make on that.
Yeah, having gone through multiple iterations of transformations in technology, there's always a fear factor of the unknown. I remember when we invented the ATM machine, the banking systems here in Boca Raton at IBM, the fear factor, oh, you're going to do away with banks, you're going to do away with the bankers, the tellers, and everything else. Is there a shortage of banks in Boca Raton? I don't think so. So every time there's a new evolution, the normal human reaction is a level of apprehension. That's normal. However, the ones that embrace it, that understand it, that actually capitalize on it, are the ones that rise to the top of the chain. So it follows the normal trend of the bleeding edge and the laggards. Same applies here, except that it's happening a whole lot faster. So the ones that will bubble up to the top will do that significantly faster. The ones that are going to lose their jobs, that will happen a whole lot faster. And we're starting to see it right now. So the key is, and you always hear the term, you're not going to be displaced by AI, you're going to be displaced by somebody that uses AI. That's very real. That's very real. So the message to everybody is, don't become a victim, actually become a power player.
Does that answer your question, Victoria?
Yes, it does for sure. Thank you so much, Pete.
Pleasure.
Any other questions? Maybe for our drone specialist, Eric?
and former IBMer too.
Yes.
Yeah. I
And if you don't, that's okay.
Another engineer at the table, right?
yes, very important for sure. I'm sure he probably also has answers to my earlier question about, you know, the intersection of legacy systems with every new emerging technology. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, so it's a typical trend, right? Legacy industries are always disrupted by new technologies, but sort of having a knowledge of those legacies, whatever that is, always gives you a competitive advantage into the new thing. I think where your generation really benefits that I didn't have even 20 years ago when I did my first startup was Gen AI. It just generates so much, whether it be in the field of legal, writing an email.
Just in the last year, it's crazy.
I mean, it's just, it's just transforming so many industries. And I think it's going to make an entrepreneur's job easier, probably more affordable in a lot of ways. I think that's a sort of unique distinction that new entrepreneurs have today that we didn't have even, like you say, Cindy, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's at our fingertips. Like, talk about proposals and
Magic.
just it
truly is magic.
It is. It's incredible.
And
it's like
it never gets it 100%. There's always a human in the loop. You
Right.
have
Of
to
course.
Which I think
right.
people forget.
Yeah, you have to take that content. You really have to shape it into your own.
but it gives you such a jump start on things. That's the cool thing.
You know, and I'm glad we're talking about this. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I sense this tremendous fear. Like you said, Pete, AI is going to replace people. It's really going to improve the productivity. It's more of a productivity tool. And I'm going to steal your quote. You're not going to lose a job to AI potentially. You're going to lose your job to someone else that's leveraging AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of your responsibility, like any new tool, to learn it and to leverage it, or you'll be displaced. And that's true for any new technology, in my opinion. So Victoria, you've been great. Any parting thoughts?
No, thank you so much for answering my questions. And I'm just excited that you guys invited me. And for anybody listening out there, I'll be leading events here. So right now we're planning our Tech Hub Pulse conference, which is our flagship conference. And we also have South Florida DevCon for all the developers out there. And I'm super excited.
You will be in, what day are you going to be at the Tech Hub booth at Emerge?
Yes, I'm going to be there on Thursday and Friday.
Oh,
so
here's your chance.
I will be everybody there. And I'll also be here on Owwll every Wednesday from 12 to 2 p.m. as well for office hours. If anybody wants to connect on partnerships or any events we have coming up or anything else.
All right, Victoria, thank you.
Welcome, Victoria.
Great,
Congrats.
great. Thanks for taking well, we're done.
By the way, related to the point that we're on, the impact on education. I just read yesterday that there is a school in Austin, a high school in Austin, that they'll be using a lot of AI, but very, very intricate ways to personalize education. Okay, so it's not how do you educate the masses, how do you personalize the education? Their students right now are in the top 2% in the country in terms
Wow.
of performance. And what they found is that the students are learning faster the material that they needed to do. So it's actually freeing up a whole lot more time to work on special projects that they want to do, applying what they've learned. So it could be in robotics, it could be in health, it could be a variety of different things. But because the stimulus is such that the personalization of the education is such a stimulus, then they're learning a whole lot faster. It becomes personalized, and then they have time left over to say, okay, now how do I start applying the knowledge?
They
Phenomenal.
should make it a model for others. I mean, how incredible when you think about that, because school is not one size fits all. And we're finding that out a lot now. The education system, no disrespect, but it is broken, like the healthcare system, So that's a great story, Pete.
And we're learning it right here at FAU High School and Henderson, the elementary. They're off the chart. I have 2 grandkids that are there. A 4th grader doing Python coding for underwater robots. I don't even know what that means
Incredible.
anymore, but
Yeah.
it's unlimited, the brain power that exists at a very, very young age. Unleash it, let it crank it, and yeah, there's unlimited amount of capability, and that personalization, it just takes it off the chart.
Yeah, because everybody learns differently, right? And that's the cool thing about AI, identifying those differences and being able to customize education.
We've been teaching to the least common denominator, the slowest kid in the class. And it's unfortunate because the slowest kid is not necessarily the slowest kid. It's just learning in the wrong
Right.
sense. So we learn a lot at kids with autism. One of the best usage of AI is actually to normalize their limitations in communication and unleash the superpowers that they have. We know
Mhm.
that kids with Asperger's are geniuses.
Brilliant.
However, they have
Right.
a communication capability that hinders them. Well, what if we can actually use the AI, just as we did with speech recognition back in the 1980s, to say, hey, the impediment is not your lack of being able to see the screen or touch the keyboard. We're going to remove that barrier and actually enable you to participate in the education and the business world. Same thing is going to happen here, but a whole lot more with the neurological type of phenomenon.
Like Richard Branson, I mean, and dyslexia. I mean, it's incredible. And he had to go
Musk.
through those hurdles. We had Nancy with the Harvey Academy here.
Right.
So that was cool because she has programs for kids with learning differences, and they're brilliant kids. They just learn differently.
That replay, the replay with Nancy Harvey is out on the Owwll
We should
YouTube
get
channel.
Pete to speak there.
So, couple of things, Pete. One of the other core areas that Tech Hub focuses on is tech talent. Pete and I were talking that, and congratulations on your growth, but due to your growth, you're actually going to be doing some hiring. So talk a little about the roles that you're interested in. You can reach out to Pete next week, not this week. And also, you indicated to me you are still interested in potential funding. So talk about the roles you're going to have available and then the funding you might be interested in finding.
Yeah, we still working on the 3 towers. One, the scientific. So the scientific, well, we've concentrated a lot of the genomics right now. Now we're building, okay, so what is the genomic relationship to the other systems of the body, the neurosystem, the cardio system? So we're looking for deep technology slash bio knowledge, the ones that are pushing the envelope in terms of the specialists in the different systems. In the technology side, it is going to be very much private language model development. Primarily because it's no longer capturing all of the information from the internet. Private language model says, yeah, you define the scope of the work and you only load it up with your own data or the trusted data that you have from sources that you have. But it changes the way we communicate with the systems. Like you mentioned, the consumer engaged now in ways that they haven't had before. But a lot of the thrust is what we have is the go-to-market. So looking for big time sales executives, sales entrepreneurs, sales that can leverage the social media through different
A lot
channels.
of those people are out there in the Owwll community.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's going to be key, because we're looking for the disruptive model in terms of the go-to-market as well, given that a lot of the market seems to be physicians and geneticists that typically have not bought from a social media channel and such. How do you actually enable these people through different means and get their productivity up as quickly as possible?
So thank you for that. One last question. Talk about the fact that even though you're a mature company, you still consider yourself a startup and are interested in funding. Did I have that? Did I describe you correctly?
Yeah. So it usually takes 6 to 10 years to become an overnight success, right? So we're on our way. But we were very fortunate not to have to raise money early on, because that could have been very much of a showstopper for us. We were able to maintain the whole core group, and as you mentioned, Eric, primarily because I had a job already. So this was a part-time, but very, very because 10 minutes of these people's time was worth a lifetime of many others. So keep it that. So now we started the money raise because we're going to go through a growth spike. So we started raising money in the traditional way that you go, the friends and family, and then the seed round, and then the Series A. We're collapsing all of those very quickly because of the speed of the growth is happening very significantly, where a lot of people have put the emphasis on the value of our business. One, you got an established platform. So it's not, we're about to design something that sometime in the future and everything else. The technology is rock solid. The second one is the team associated with it is just, it's an all-star team. But where a lot of the value has been placed on the business is 160,000 cases worth of data. And that data is at a premium right now. And what we're seeing is the data is the raw material of the information age. And the data has a greater value than the dollar. Why? Because you can repurpose the data. You can create it one time and sell it many, which you can't do that with the dollar. So rightfully so, the business is being valued around the data, current and future promise.
Okay. This is the sad part of the podcast. And this is what I tell people. As in life, there are sad parts and happy parts. The sad part is we've reached sort of the end of the podcast. I want to thank Cindy, Pete, and Eric. But before we close, let's do what I call going around the horn. I'm going to let you go first, Eric, then Pete, then Cindy, and I'll close this out. Eric, any parting thoughts, anything you want to mention, an event or promote anything that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I would say one of the things when you get acquired, you really learn what they're acquiring isn't necessarily the technology, it's the team. When you get acquired, it's the team. It's all that institutional knowledge, the ability to create it, sustain it. I can't emphasize how much the team is critical to not only getting funding, but, getting acquired. I mean, that's really where all the emphasis is. Yeah. So I wouldn't lose sight of that when you're creating.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we focus too much on the technology and not enough on the team, I think.
Exactly.
And that cycle of the acquisition is very interesting, because at the first volley is, oh, it's so beautiful. I mean, what you discovered. And then when they start with the diligence and they're negotiating, your baby really is missing a leg. And then when you all ultimately said, oh, it's such a beautiful baby.
From a high level, it always looks great. The due diligence is really a complicated part of being acquired. And the same thing for funding. When you go through the due diligence, it's a very painful process. Yeah.
So Pete, parting thoughts?
Yeah, I will close with the same statement that I started, which is I am so bullish in South Florida right now. I have seen the growth. I've been participating on it, and I am as enthusiastic about South Florida as I've ever been in my life. We got the discipline, we got the business culture, we got the innovation, and now we have the money.
Cindy, parting thoughts?
Amazing. Well, my daughter's in pre-med and UF, and I'm going to have to connect her to you, Pete.
After you for some time.
She's a smarty pants too. Anyway, I have to give a shout out. We are hoping to have TEDx Boca Raton to celebrate BOCA's 100th anniversary on October 4th at the BOCA Innovation Campus. We need desperately partners and sponsors. We are volunteers, Eric and I. And again, we've been doing this since 2017 every single year. It is a struggle. I'm going to be honest. We sometimes, believe it or not, in our, I don't want to say our age, but pull all-nighters to do TEDx. So we need the community to rally and help us, and anyone out there who wants to get involved, whether it's through a volunteer partnership. We know lots of people want to do a TED Talk, but you can't do a TED Talk if you don't have a TEDx event happening, right?
So what's if someone wants to volunteer, if there's a sponsor out there?
Yeah, we
what's
have
the
a
best way
partner
to reach
packet at TEDxBocaRaton.com. You can go to the partner tab and drop down, and there's a whole partner packet there. We have partnerships for as little as $100. So if you want to get involved in the TEDx community, reach out. We'd love to partner with you.
And you might want to spell your last name for people that don't know you.
Me?
Yes, you.
I
think Cindy's okay.
Metzler is my last name, and Cindy, Cindy.
So Cindy's on the Owwll app. She's on LinkedIn, Instagram. Please reach out to her. So for me, a couple of quick reminders. Pete will be in the SIVOTEC booth at eMerge 1210. When's your talk going to be at eMerge?
Doing it Friday afternoon at 1:15 in the main tent.
Friday afternoon, 1:15, main tent. Be there. Tech Hub booth 449. I'll be there both days. The Owwll booth 239. Steph and Jason will be there. Thank you to Eric, Pete, and Cindy. Been a great show. I knew it would be. Thank you for watching. As always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think we're out. We'll be here next week. Have a great day.
What an incredible show, you guys. Thank you.